Sorry, Wendy, just give me 1 second. Still getting their feet up.
We begin our meeting tonight by acknowledging that this meeting is taking place on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We're dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. You may be seated. Well, good evening, everyone online for this virtual meeting and watching us at home. It is good to get back to the Monday night tradition of City Council in Barrie. And our meeting tonight, we do have several items on the agenda from before the COVID pandemic, but also some related to COVID itself, a presentation a little later from our CAO, and a relevant item around community gardens. But before we get to that, just a note on why we are proceeding and how we are proceeding. Obviously, this is a virtual meeting of Barrie City Council. All members of council are here remotely. I'm in the chambers at City Hall along with the city clerk, and our CAO is in another room here at City Hall as well. We are broadcasting tonight, live streaming on YouTube as well as on Rogers, and thank you for that. And it is our intention to resume that Monday night schedule. It will look a little different over the coming weeks, not only because we're meeting remotely, but because our agendas obviously have been affected by what's going on. And not only are there new things we need to deal with related to COVID, but we will be focusing in the weeks to come on continuing to move forward with the planning and building processes in the city. This is one of many steps we can take towards supporting economic recovery in Barrie. And it was important to all of us that we support the business community and keep our city moving forward. So we're resuming that regular schedule of Monday night meetings. In time, as we work out the technology, we will be able to have public meetings under the Planning Act. But in the meantime, we want to proceed with some of the business of council, particularly those items that can help support our economy as we eventually open up and move back to normal. So that being said, tonight we do have a fairly substantial planning matter on the agenda, actually several planning matters on the agenda, but among them the redevelopment proposal for the former Barrie Central and Prince of Wales lands, which includes the new YMCA and a residential development. And of course, that went through general committee and then COVID hit. So we are tonight taking the final step in that process, and that matter is in front of council for decision, along with several others out of planning committee that actually occurred in early March. That being said, before we get to any of those items, our first item on the agenda is confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the meetings held March 2nd, March 9th, March 30th, and April 15th, 2020. So we'll do each of those in turn. The minutes of the City Council meeting, that was the first one. The City Council meeting held March 2nd, 2020 have been circulated. Any corrections to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, and I will remind members of council, you've been issued those colorful new cards. Thank you, Councillor Natalie Harris. There's the demonstration. No, yes, and a request to speak. And just a reminder to raise that request to speak card if you do wish to speak to an item, and we will recognize you. So with no corrections to the minutes from March 2nd, those are adopted as printed and circulated. Minutes of the City Council meeting held March 9th have been circulated. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, those are adopted as printed and circulated. The minutes of the City Council meeting held March 30th have been circulated. Any corrections to the minutes from March 30th? Seeing none, those are adopted as printed and circulated. And finally, the minutes of the City Council meeting, the special meeting that was held April 15th, those have been circulated. Any corrections to those minutes? None. Okay, those 4 sets of minutes are adopted as printed and circulated. Obviously, without the ability to gather, we're not doing awards and recognition tonight. We do not have any reports from officers or deputations on the committee reports. I should note individuals who had indicated an interest in some of the matters that are on the agenda tonight were contacted to see if they wanted to deputize tonight, and they could have been accommodated, but chose not to. So we do not have any deputation requests tonight. Tax applications, there are none, or communication matters, which brings us to the committee reports. And we do have a number of these. I'll try and read out what they're about as we go. The first one we're going to do is the Planning Committee report from March 3rd. Deputy Mayor Ward, I think you have the motions.
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the Planning Committee report dated March 3rd, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the Planning Committee report from March 3rd be adopted. This is with regards to 2 planning approvals. First, the application for a zoning bylaw amendment for ADA custom homes. That's at 435 Big Bay Point. The second one is an application for zoning bylaw amendment for Ballymore Building Barrie, and that is at 750 Lockhart Road. Comments or questions on Section A? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Please vote using your cards. Those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? None. That carries. Thank you. Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the Planning Committee report dated March 3rd, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the Planning Committee report from March 3rd be received. This is to receive the reports of the 3 public meetings that were held that night under the Planning Act. They were for 180 and 198 Ardagh Road, 158, 162, 166, and 170 Ardagh Road, and 272 Innisfil Street. And just a reminder to those watching at home, these are not approvals of those applications, just approval of the record that we held a public meeting and what was said at the meeting. Any comments or questions, members of council, on Section B? Seeing none, I will ask you to vote. Those in favor of Section B to be received. Any opposed? None. That carries. Section C, please, Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the Planning Committee report dated March 3rd, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you very much. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the Planning Committee report from March 3rd be adopted. This is with regards to 34 to 50 Bradford Street and a portion of 125 Dunlop Street West, the former Barrie Central and Prince of Wales lands and city-owned lands. Councillor Kungle.
Yes, thank you. I, as a member of the board of directors with the YMCA Simcoe Muskoka, have a potential pecuniary conflict of interest related to Section C of the Planning Committee report from March 3rd, 2020.
Thanks very much. Madam Clerk, has Councillor Kungle's potential pecuniary interest been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. On Section C, Councillor Riepma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll put that on the floor, and I have amendment to that matter.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll speak to it in a minute. The amendment consists of two parts. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morales. That we add a further section to Section 2G, that the final site plan be presented to City Council for final approval. And then we add a further section to F, that any land deemed surplus by any extension of Simcoe Street that is contiguous to the subject land would be interpreted to be zoned C1-2 special section. And I can speak to that if you wish.
Thank you very much, Councillor Riepma. We have an amendment. It's moved by Councillor Riepma and seconded by Councillor Morales, that Section C of the Planning Committee report dated March 3rd, 2020 be amended to add the following to paragraph 2F, that any land deemed surplus by an extension of Simcoe Street that's contiguous to the subject lands would be interpreted to be zoned C1-2 SP special provision. 2G, that this final site plan be presented to City Council for final approval. Councillor Riepma, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are two small matters here that we're asking to be amended to the motion. The first one is, if you will recall, there's a small parcel of land on the west side, west side of Simcoe Street, if Simcoe Street goes through, that is part of the development and is owned by the city and would be transferred to HIP developments. And the intention would be that when that land is transferred, that it would also be zoned so that, and it's a very small triangle, but the problem would be is that it would just delay HIP because they would have to come back and rezone that parcel. So we're on, we might as well do the zoning of that little strip right away. And the second addition is that the site plan come to City Council for approval. Normally, this is a staff matter, but this is a really, really important piece of land to the west end of downtown. It includes the YMCA, and it abuts our future concert hall, maybe, if we're depending on what we do with that. And there are a number of outstanding items in terms of site design that need to be resolved. I'm quite sure staff can do that, but on occasion, when there's an important site plan, it can be bumped up to council for final approval, and that's what we're suggesting in this case. It will not affect the timing of approval because this bylaw that is before us tonight has a holding provision built into it. So it needs to come to council in any event in order to remove the holding provision. And when staff is ready to remove the holding provision, then at the same time, one of the requirements is site plan approval. So it would just come back to council at that time. So that's the thinking behind these two small amendments.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Councillor Riepma. Councillor Morales, did you care to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I guess I just wanted to just echo the uniqueness of why I personally am behind this amendment. This is what I consider a critical mass project. This is I think all developments are local. Some are low density, some are a couple of towns, some are infill. Something like a 5 Points, something like this site, have the ability to impact not only their own site, but the sites around it, the neighborhood, the culture, and really be a springboard for development. So personally, I want to make sure we get this development right, and bumping up site plan in a very unique circumstance. I don't want to give the notion that we're bumping up site plans for any and all proposals. This is a unique, extremely tall, extremely high density project that will be the catalyst for revitalization of our West End on Dunlop Street, and that is the uniqueness as to why, in my opinion, it's prudent to bump up the site plan and make sure we get some of the design details correct. So this can be a building that people decades from now look back at this council, at staff, and the developer and all those involved and say they got it right.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Councillor Morales. Are there other comments on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll just briefly say I'm in favor of that as well. In days gone by, all site plans of this magnitude or character would have automatically been matters for council. We did delegate a number of site plans or site plan authority for certain types of development in order to expedite the process. But as Councillor Reitman has rightly noted, with the hold provision, this isn't really a matter of adding time to the approval process by doing this. And certainly this, as both of you have indicated, is a very, very significant project for the community. So with that, I'll call the question on the amendment. Please use your cards. Those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Is anyone opposed? None. That carries. On the main motion as amended, section C of the Planning Committee report, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion, section C as amended. Those in favor? Any opposed? None. That carries as well. Thank you very much. Thanks, Councillors Reitman and Morales. That completes the Planning Committee agenda. And for those watching at home, Council has given final approval to the planning approval for the redevelopment of the Barrie Central and Prince of Wales lands. Now, of course, just because there has been a lot of interest around this particular application, it's important to clarify that is not the approval for the city-owned lands, the lands around Fisher Auditorium, and the construction that you are watching go on at the moment on that site does not have anything to do with this development approval. I should note at this point for those watching that construction that's going on there is part of the Kids Creek infrastructure project. It's primarily a stormwater project. That is not development proceeding either on the city lands or the subject lands that we have just approved. However, this is a major step forward in that the zoning bylaw amendment, the planning approval for those 3 high-rise buildings and the new YMCA has been approved tonight by Barrie Council. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the General Committee report from March 9th. Deputy Mayor Ward, Section A, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of General Committee report dated March 9th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee report dated March 9th, 2020 be received. It's to receive the report of the City Building Committee from its February meeting and its March meeting. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries. Thank you. Section B, please. Deputy
Moved by
Mayor Ward.
myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted. These were the items that were passed on consent. It feels like 4 years ago on March 9th. The items that were passed on consent that night at General Committee were as follows. Adding the cenotaph and the Military Heritage Park to the Municipal Heritage Registry. A request for a review of the Lake Simcoe Protection Act. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority funding for the Scanlon Creek Environmental Center and also for their Therapy in the Woods programs. The Barrie Collingwood Railway Market Feasibility Study and Modernization Review. our Water Operations Branch 2019 Drinking Water Systems reports. So those are the annual reports for 2019 for the drinking water system. Community space at Hewitt's Community Center, an item, and public art acquisitions, also an item for discussion. Any comments or questions on section B? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor of section B, please indicate. Any opposed? Any opposed? None. Okay, that carries. Thank you. Section C, please, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section C of General Committee Report dated March 9, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward and seconded by Councillor Thompson that section C of the General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted. This is with regards to the Municipal Heritage Register for 92 Clapperton Street and separately 151, 155, and 161 Bradford. Comments or questions on section C? Seeing none, those in favor of section C? Are any opposed? None. That carries. Thank you. Section D, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section D of General Committee Report dated March 9, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section D of the General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be received. This is the committee appointments. Members of council, of course, will recall we approved these at a previous council meeting in order to allow them to take effect a little earlier. So we are simply receiving section D tonight. It's already been approved. Any comments or questions on section D? Seeing none, those in favor of section D? Is anyone opposed? None. That carries. Section E, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section E of General Committee Report dated March 9, 2020 be received or be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section E of General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted. This is with regards to the UNHCR Statement of Solidarity. It was an item for discussion. Comments or questions on section E? Okay, seeing none, those in favor of section E? Anybody opposed? None. That carries. Section F, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section F of General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section F of the General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted. This is with regards to clothing and textile collection. It was an item for discussion for March 9th. Any comments or questions on section F? Seeing none, call the question on that. Those in favor of section F? Any opposed? None. Carries. We're on to G.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section G of General Committee Report dated March 9, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section G of the General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be received. These were two confidential items, one a memorandum from the Integrity Commissioner, the second a confidential personal information matter. Comments or questions on section G? Seeing none, those in favor of section G? Anybody opposed? None. That carries. Thank you. Section H, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section H of General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section H of the General Committee Report dated March 9th, 2020 be adopted. These are the appointments to the Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Active Transportation Sustainability Advisory Committees. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of section H? Anybody opposed? None. That carries. Okay, that was a lot of different sections of that report, but that was the business that was conducted at General Committee on March 9th. Council's given final approval to those matters or received those matters. And we can move on now to the General Committee report for March 30th. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the General Committee Report dated March 30th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the General Committee Report dated March 30th, 2020 be received. This is to receive the presentation that we received that night concerning a confidential labor relations matter, COVID-19 update, Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of section A from March 30th is to be received. Any opposed? None. That carries. And section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of General Committee Report dated March 30th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward and seconded by Councillor Thompson that section B of the General Committee Report dated March 30th, 2020 be adopted. This is with regards to the keeping of backyard hens. Comments or questions on section B? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor of section B? Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, and for those watching, that is for our staff to report on the matter. It is not any approval to start keeping backyard hens today, but it is for staff to give us a report on potentially how to do that in the city of Barrie. That completes March 30th. Yes, it does. And we can move to the general committee agenda from April 8th. Deputy Mayor Ward.
April 27th or April 8th? Get a second.
Should be April 8th. For the meeting.
Oh, sorry,
date.
that's just today's
The
date.
date of the motion is today's, yeah.
That section, yeah, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the General Committee Report dated April 8th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the General Committee Report dated April 8th, 2020 be received. It is to receive the two presentations, the report and the presentations we had that night, the task force update and the COVID-19 update from the CIO. Comments or questions on section A? Seeing none, those in favor of receiving section A, please indicate. Any opposed? None. Carries. Thank you. Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of General Committee Report dated April 8th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the General Committee Report dated April 8th, 2020 be received. It's to receive the report of the presentation on the confidential labor relations matter related to COVID-19 from April 8th. Comments or questions on section B? Seeing none, those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries as well. That completes a lot of general committee reports. That was us playing catch up for those playing our home game. That was 4 general committee meetings, admittedly, 2 of them special meetings under the state of emergency, which were pretty brief, but there are a significant number of items that council's given final approval to tonight. I won't go back through all of them, but I know there were a number of community interest, and we'll certainly push that information out tomorrow after the meeting. Okay, that completes the committee reports. We do not have any deferred business on tonight's agenda, but we do have a direct motion. Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So I will read the text of the direct motion just so people at home get a sense for what we're talking about here.
Thank you.
So whereas food security has been identified as a key challenge by the Mayor's Social Support Task Force, and whereas locally grown food contributes to a healthy and resilient food system, now therefore be it resolved as follows. That staff in the Operations Department, in consultation with the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, review the proposed COVID-19 comprehensive safety recommendations for community gardens released by the Community Growing Network Sustain Ontario in order to prepare for the safe operation of local community gardens at Eastview Community Park, Sunnydale Park, Sheer Park, and Golden Meadow Park. And 2, that staff in the Operations Department investigate the creation of a backyard garden program that provides supplies, for example, topsoil, compost, seedlings, seeds, and information to support residents to grow produce and herbs for their own consumption and for donation to local food banks and community organizations, and report back to General Committee.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Aylwin. It is moved by Councillor Aylwin, seconded by Councillor Kungl. Under the Emergency Measures and Civil Protection Act, outdoor or related to the Emergency Measures Act and outdoor community gardens. I won't read the full text of the motion again, but it relates to allowing our community gardens to reopen, and secondly, to create a backyard garden program. Thanks for putting this on. And Councillor Owen, did you care to speak to that?
Yes, please.
Okay,
thanks, Mayor Lehman. So originally this motion was a request to the Government of Ontario to reconsider declaring community gardens as a non-essential service. They classified it as a recreational amenity. But over the weekend, the provincial government did make the decision to allow community gardens to reopen, which is great news. I want to be very clear, though, we still need to follow the physical distancing measures and all advice from our public health officials. That much is completely clear. We can't give up now. We are starting to flatten the curve, so now is not the time to be lax with those rules. But I think, as your task force has demonstrated, Mayor Lehman, food security is an issue, particularly in a time like this, during an economic crisis as well as a pandemic. And we should be creating a local and resilient food system for all times so that we're prepared for crisis. And we know that in Simcoe Muskoka, around 12% of households face food insecurity. And that's according to our local health unit. And that was before COVID-19 and the current economic crisis. So this is just a way for the city of Barrie to help people get a backyard garden started, get out there with the kids, learn a bit about nature and how to grow your own food. And hopefully council will support that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Owen. Councillor Kungle, did you wish to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
On also some recent media, a positive media coming out of the city of Brampton around support to a backyard garden program. And from that, had a lot of resident conversations, and through a quick poll, we've seen about 210 individuals within the city of Barrie that have identified interest in seeing this proceed and are aligned. So hoping to see the benefit of this potential program. I've also reached out to Councillor Willens with the city of Brampton to engage in opportunities for us to learn and share that information forward, and believe there is a template perhaps under development that other municipalities might be able to use and leverage. So hopefully we're seeing the beginning of something that might move and grow across all of our municipalities.
Thanks for that, Councillor Kungle. Councillor Thompson, I saw you indicate.
Thanks, Mayor Lehman. Through you to Miss Miller, please.
Go ahead.
I know that we've laid off a lot of staff, and the remaining staff members are working with reduced hours, and parks are only able to get the bare necessity, the basic service levels. Could your team deliver this backyard program without jeopardizing the necessary ongoing works being performed today?
Ms. Miller.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson. I mean, certainly we understand the challenges with food security, and the operations team is very supportive of the concept. I will be honest, it will be challenging at best for us to actually deliver a new backyard program this year. We only are going to have 29 staff to deliver a very basic parks and open space program when we normally have about 114 staff. So it'll be challenging to deliver something meaningful.
A follow-up.
Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Just a follow-up question, Ms. Miller. Is there any way staff, like with ideas or any information we could share with the community garden group to show people, like the community side of the gardening to homeowners, and basically doing it without the city involvement? We already, give compost and stuff. I just think, like, we talk a lot about ship government and all that stuff. Like, I just like the Brampton motto involves a lot of nurseries and community partners. So I just don't know why we're trying to put it on the back of the city right now, just in light of everything going on.
Sure. I think that certainly we have a lot of knowledge and links to great information that we could certainly make available and work with the councillors and the community to make that information available as this unfolds. I think we can leverage our digital communication channels through our communications department and certainly at a minimum share those links. I also am aware, just briefly, that there are a number of local nurseries that I think have some developing business opportunities that, particularly in this curbside environment, might be interesting for the community to be more aware of, and we can help promote that. So certainly, Councillor Thompson, I think that there are things that we can offer. If that is the wish of council to offer versus information versus physical involvement.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. I do have a speakers list. Next, I have Councillor Ritma.
The technology was giving me a challenge here for a minute. I'm going to support this motion because I think that food insecurity is a challenge here for quite a number of people, and I think that doing some backyard gardening is a great idea. And I also recognize that our staff, especially in this situation, is going to be really pressed to really deliver very much as requested in item number 2. That doesn't prevent them from trying and doing their best, I think, at this point, and get the ball rolling. One of my thoughts is that, you know, for everybody that's watching at home that does have a flower garden somewhere, you know, if you've got a little sunny spot, there's nothing stopping you from in your flower garden planting a potato or a couple of onions or, you know, tomatoes, all those kinds of things. And while it may not create a huge crop for you that you could feed your family on for a long time, at least it gives you something. And it's a great way to start, and it's a great way to educate children in how you grow things. And I think that certainly we have lots of opportunities and lots of people's gardens to plant a rogue potato or a tomato or something like that. So I'd encourage that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mary Lehman. Yeah, so I think, you know, there isn't a question that we're all concerned about food security or food insecurity. And I think that we have to really listen to Ms. Miller, that the timing of this might not be the best right now. I also wanted to mention that I think it's a great suggestion when Councillor Thompson said to have the community members maybe come forward and start this kind of group already. I know that one resident in my ward is very excited at looking to help the city to develop something like this, so I can provide that resource to Ms. Miller. And I've also been in talks with a local nursery, I won't say the name obviously publicly yet, to potentially get donations of seeds. So maybe we can look at, you know, reaching out as councillors in our wards, you know, to those nurseries and maybe getting some seeds donated, just to kind of avoid the cost right now that we're trying to keep down. Again, it's a wonderful idea, and growing food and growing our herbs and everything is going to be, you know, what we need to promote. But I'm just really concerned about staff and costs right now with everything else, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Jim Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. I guess I have a question through you to Ms. Miller. I was just wondering, obviously the plans for the City of Barrie Community Gardens would have been stalled given COVID-19 responsibilities. Just wonder if you could give us an update of where they are vis-a-vis the number of plots that we had last year, the number of plots that were planned. I believe there was a plan, I spoke to Ms. Lubenwerk about the community garden project, and there was exciting news about expansion. So I wondered if you could tell me the planned number for the expansion of the and locations of the community garden for this year. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Harris, through you, Mayor Lehman. The expansion program definitely has been stalled, and we aren't proceeding with that at this time. But there was one additional community garden that was added last fall, and that still has space available in it. And there are 3 other locations that have space available, plots available. There's about 25 plots in total in our 4 community garden programs that are currently available if people are interested. So there certainly is availability if people are interested in using that community garden program. And we will be working closely with the Sitka Muskoka District Health Unit on the guidelines once those are issued, and ensure that the physical distancing and sanitation protocols that are required now that community gardens are allowed to operate are put in place.
Thank you. And maybe one further question. One of the items in the amendment is the offering of seedlings. Would that not require preparation before now, such that we wouldn't have seedlings if this was approved to be able to offer? I'm no gardener, so I'm just not sure how far ahead you have to plan for things like seedlings.
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Harris, through you, Mayor Lehman. The seedlings will also be a challenge. Right now, we don't have capacity in the city greenhouse, and it is also about an 8-week delivery time from seedling preparation to maturity and delivery. So that would certainly be right at the cusp of when we would need to be doing final plantings if people were doing something in their backyard. But there are lots of seedling options that many of the local nurseries certainly are promoting.
Okay, thank you. Would that be one of the one follow-up? Would that be one of the methods, or when you answered Councillor Thompson's question about staff capacity to? There's no greenhouse space and ramping up space, and I guess so that really we would be purchasing seedlings, I guess, would be the bottom line. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, at this point in time, we do not have either capacity in the greenhouse or staff capacity to assist with that delivery of seedlings or topsoil process that is mentioned in the motion. But we certainly would be more than happy to share information that we have tried to gather and can continue to gather and share with councillors and the community on other options that might be available.
Thank you. Maybe a question for through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Congle. Councillor Congle, do you know if in the Brampton model, and thank you for sharing that, I did see your post, I appreciate having a chance to look into it, but I wasn't able to determine, and I do understand that they have some public partnerships. Were there seeds and seedlings donated by greenhouses and nurseries? Do you know if that's the way they ran their program, or run their program, pardon me?
I believe, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris, I believe so. I'll have to go back to their website. It was posted, and I've asked for more information. So as we've got the motion couched as it is, those are examples around potential scope. But again, hoping to have city staff come back with some information about what could be put in scope. We do have a very interesting number of individuals that have already started to volunteer, or how we could actually mobilize individuals around this. So I don't see it as being a program fully tied to capacity to run based on city service at a cost or at a workforce, but rather, should we have compost or topsoil available that we hypothetically could be made free or at low cost or no cost to residents, what would it take to actually access that? And would we be able to do that through volunteers or through partnerships, rather than necessarily assuming the program would run just specific to city delivery?
Okay, and I was thank you, Councillor Congle, because I know currently we have, as a resident, you can get free compost for your home garden, so that would be business as usual. I guess the challenge right now is we don't have access to our landfill, therefore we can't, as a resident, go to get the compost. as I think the community gardening is exciting, and I've been involved in efforts in the past with the Urban Pantry Project through Trillium. I know I've spoken to Jenna Zardo with another private community providers looking at a garden. And I know that in the past, private community gardens weren't able to be considered for free compost, and I understand why, but maybe now given the challenges with COVID and that this might be a good time for that. But I'm also hearing what Ms. Miller said around the challenges related to staffing, timing, and the landfill not being open. We can't have access to compost now anyway, so I'm just struggling a little bit with the timing and just having the chance to really fully vet this through. So I'll leave it at that. But I'll wait for other comments and questions. But thank you for answering my questions.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. I guess I would just contribute at this point that the motion is to investigate the creation of the program. So if council approves the motion, we're directing staff to figure out the best way to do it. And I think, I mean, obviously, if Brampton, Mayor Brown and Councillor and Doug Willens in Brampton have been huge supporters of their program, and the program's been an incredible success. Councillor Willens, who brought it forward, tweeted today that they have 8,000 people participating. So if you do the math to the city of Barrie and assume the same type of take-up, that's 2,000 households here, because Brampton's about 4 times the population we have. So I think Ms. Miller's concerns are very real. If we were to attempt to deliver anything to 2,000 households, that's a major investment of time and labor and logistics. That being said, let's give our staff the opportunity to work out if there is another way to do it that doesn't involve a city truck going to 2,000 driveways, which I can't imagine. I know Brampton has been doing this in conjunction with some partners. They have had a substantial number of donations from nurseries, and I think your point, Councillor Harris, is very well taken. That it's not. We're probably past the point, as Ms. Miller says, in the year where we could get seedlings ready in time. But there are plenty of nurseries out there in the city who probably aren't selling anywhere near what they would in a normal year, and those crops were started in March before COVID. So I think Brampton's had enormous success with this, and I heard Mayor Brown talking about it the other day, and I've heard the councillor talking about it, and I think the lessons that they've already learned in the first couple of weeks of doing this would be quickly applicable to other cities who chose to pursue it. But unto itself, it is an opportunity for our staff to figure out what the best way to do it in Barrie is. And if it comes with substantial cost or resource requirements, then council will have a decision to make as to whether or not we pursue it. But the item tonight obviously wouldn't approve that. It would be to approve figuring out what the options to deliver a program would be. Councillor Morales, and then Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. To the movers of the motion, did you guys touch base with community groups that have to do with encouraging community gardens fruit delivery? Like I don't know if we still have that fruit share, Barrie, or Living Green Barrie, those kind of different programs. Again, I'm supportive. I was supportive of the motion last week when it was to advocate for the government to open up. Now, taking that extra step to then becoming almost a partner in the delivery model. I'm getting a little bit cold feet there, so I'm going to refocus my question. Did you guys approach these organizations and say, hey, are you willing to do this? Because if it's something that they're willing to step up on their own without needing the municipality to either provide for free, subsidize, coordinate the logistics of delivery, I think that it'd be successful on its own. I think they probably know better. These people have been doing it for years. They're passionate about it, and it wouldn't tie up our staff time and our resources, and again keeps us focused on the bare essentials that we need to do right now as a municipality. So have we reached out to those groups and maybe they just said no, or what's going on?
Councillor Aylwin, do you want to answer that, or Councillor?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I'll take it. Thanks, Mayor Lehman, and thanks for the question, Councillor Morales. Actually, I used to be on the steering committee of Urban Pantry, and I was involved with Fruit Share as well. And the intention with this motion is to see where the city can provide resources. Thank you, Mayor Lehman, for clarifying that, we're not approving a program this evening. We're just looking to task our staff with seeing what is possible, recognizing that we are in a crisis, that there are limited resources. So looking at the partnerships with community groups would be a part of the staff investigation, hopefully, and in the report back to General Committee. I think there's lots of opportunity there, and I'm glad we're having this conversation to highlight that.
But
Councillor,
just as follow up to, sorry, Mayor Lehman, just a follow up to Councillor Owen's answer there. Is there a reason why you guys didn't approach these private organizations? I know you said it would be part of the report, but I'm just wondering if they have the capacity now and they have the ability to do it and not bring in the municipality into it. Like again, if the motion had been brought forward to encourage a partnership or to provide the groups with storage capacity or something like that on city lands, like it'd be a more thought out motion. But this just, I don't understand. Is there a benefit to approaching those organizations after the fact instead of having you guys already have done that before bringing the motion?
sorry, Councillor Kungle, I think had indicated previously, and I did want her to be able to answer that. So go ahead, Councillor Kungle.
Thank you. So we've moved this at least to table the conversation and concept, so we can engage more thoughtfully around identifying, should we at least have soil or compost? What would it take to mobilize that? And then we can actually leverage a lot of really amazing partnerships that exist, as well as potentially individual residents, with more specific information about what's needed and how we could approach that. So this was really already for myself, hearing Ms. Miller speak to capacity, that's already a great amount of information for us to understand what could be realistic, and then what particular partners we may want to engage based on their resources and capacity.
So Councillor Morales, since we are at council, and just a reminder to members of council, you can only speak to an item once. So if you have already spoken to it, you can ask a question, but it can't be a position statement disguised as a question. But Councillor Morales, you still have the floor. So did you wish to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I guess based on the answers that I gave, again, I'm supportive of this occurring. I'm really focused on the fact that, we have had hundreds of layoffs in the city. We've got staff tied up in really important things. As you started the meeting, Mayor Lehman, there's departments in the city of Barrie. All of them are vital services that we deliver, but there are some that really move the gears in our economy: planning, building permits, engineering, obviously health and safety, water. Those are always, and first responders are always part number one. I think we need to focus on those resources. I'll let maybe movers of the motion clarify later, or if there's more information. I don't know why we couldn't have gone to these private partners first, and they could have come up with a feasibility plan. They do this. These are passionate volunteers with sometimes decades of expertise on how to do this. They're the ones that actually led the charge, as Councillor Alwood said, in his capacity and other members, to even getting community gardens and bringing awareness. So I don't know why we didn't engage them before bringing this motion. I think if they had come in here and said, this is our logistical plan, this is our support, this is where we're storing it, this is how we're doing distribution, and we need X, Y, and Z, then we know what the ask is. I think I would have been in a different situation then than I am now. But again, I'm trying to focus on focusing on the bare essentials that we need to provide service delivery, and Ms. Miller's concerns without having approached those organizations first are on my mind. So I'll leave it at that and hear what other members of council have to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Natalie Harris, I had you next. You did already speak to it. So just, are there any other questions that you had on this?
Yeah, it's just a question of clarification. I'm a bit confused now. Is that okay if I ask?
Sure, go ahead. Yep.
Okay, so through you, just going back again to Ms. Miller, I thought the answer was that we just have a limited amount of staff to even investigate this. So maybe I misinterpreted that, but I just think I'm just kind of confused why it's a direct motion when maybe we don't have the right staffing right now, and it just doesn't seem like the right time when we can research other opportunities to maybe bring this forward. And if we put staff into looking into if we can make this happen, We've already just established that we still can't make it happen, even if staff says that we can. So I think the best thing, the most prudent thing to do with the limited staff we have is to just move it down the road. But Ms. Miller, if you could clarify, is it that you don't have enough staff to even investigate this potentially?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Harris, through you, Mayor Lehman. My original answer was related to the delivery of the program, if in fact it needed to go ahead, but I will clarify that yes, we would be challenged to find staff to give a robust staff report back, but I can find a couple of hours of time to at least give a short summary of the information that staff have provided me to date, and that should be able to give a little bit of direction, but it will be limited.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor McCann.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. So I'm making some notes here. I think that this reminds me of last week when we were talking about the water bill. I do have a question for the movers of the motion. Have they had a lot of residents reach out to them concerning these seedlings?
Councillor Kungl, I know you had a very, very large Facebook consultation on that. So do you want to answer that one?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann. Yeah, so from a concept, as we saw this moving forward with Brampton and saw some interesting online engagement with residents and some phone calls, I posted a high-level poll that basically asked at a proof of concept from what we knew to date in some areas. We're hearing about some great work from BC, and also the positive media and commentary and some requests with respects to the status of community gardens at that time, but also would City actually explore this type of program. And I posted that on April 21st at 8:55 p.m. And by 10:03 p.m. on April 24th, I had 210 individuals that formally polled yes, that they think the backyard garden program would be a good offer to residents. And of that, 3 voted no, with no rationale. But since then, also had many emails, probably about 25, at least 2 dozen emails that also reached out and asked about how this could be explored as an outcome.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Mayor Lehman?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the 210 Facebook friends of yours are all Barrie residents?
It was posted for full transparency. It was posted on the Barrie Family United. So we know that that is a group, a community group that's Barrie based of over 9,000 members. And at that time was a easy way in which to kind of launch something with a bit of a mass representation of individuals, I'm assuming across City of Barrie.
Maybe I can direct my question to Ms. Miller. Ms. Miller, has there been any inquiries to the City of Barrie about getting free seedlings?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann, I am not aware of any specific, but I certainly haven't researched that.
Okay, because I mean, I've had 0 residents reach out to me about the seedlings, and this reminds me of last week, when we had the water bill and we had very little residents, wanting to have the water bill, and it looks like we had some pretty good success this week. I just don't know why we're trying to solve problems that don't exist right now, and that's what I feel this is happening here. I really feel that we are in the eye of the storm right now, and that we don't know the financial impact, what COVID-19, what this crisis is going to have to Barrie. And I don't want to spend money or resources until we have a better understanding of what the City of Barrie is going to have to, do to get us on our feet. There's a lot of great questions that Councillor Morales, Councillor Harris, Councillor Thompson, and Councillor Harvey had that I just feel that really should have been answered before we are going to say yes to this motion, this direct motion. And one of them is, why a direct motion and not go through the proper channels? If it was strictly for timing, well, I don't understand that argument, if that is your argument, because we're not going to be doing this year anyways, I'm guessing, right? So that's the first one that kind of has a red flag to me. Second one is, why did you not reach out to any of the community? I know that just today I had a conversation with a councillor that this small business in Barrie may be able to supply all free seedlings. So once again, it's just, I don't know why we're trying to spend city money and city resources when our community may pull up their socks and actually want to help, much like Brampton's motto. I was actually talking to Mayor Brown today, and it is a great success, but it's a success primarily on the business community, not the councillors. And I just, I really think that as you may or may not remember, that I'm the member of Communities in Bloom, and that is a vibrant group, and that is a group that participates in gardens and have their own gardens. And I just think that our staff, and this is Lockmark, is just an excellent resource to actually kickstart this model for next year. Once again, I don't really believe it has to be pushed by council and pushed by extra staffing. So for me, I'm going to pass this because I just don't have enough information. I do think it's a great idea, but we're in a crisis right now and we don't know the financial impact. And I want to see what exactly we need to do, not what we want to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCann. I'll go to Councillor Harvey next, but I just wanted to let members of council on the issue of why it's a direct motion. That's my fault, and I want to be clear why I suggested to the councillors that was a good idea. Brampton proceeded with this in the middle of a crisis, and it's a runaway success. Their mayor got behind it. It was led by a councillor, and as Councillor McCann has rightly identified, they rallied the horticultural community in Brampton, both the industries and the community groups, and that's why they've had such an enormous take up. They proceeded with it in the midst of this. In fact, about 2 weeks ago, with this at Brampton Council and with Mayor Brown's leadership, we're able to push it forward for this year for planting season. So that was for members of council, just so you understand why I suggested to the councillors that they put this on as a direct motion. Planting season is almost upon us. For May 24th weekend, Victoria Day weekend often is the unofficial kickoff of that planting season. And if this was going to get done, if we were going to show that the city could act quickly and do something comparable to what Brampton was able to do, we would need to proceed right away. So that was the advice that I gave the councillors to proceed in that way. A number of concerns have been raised by members of council, and I would just encourage you to amend the motion to have your concerns addressed. Last week, we saw council work together to craft changes to the water bill motion, and we've seen over 2,000 of our households take us up on that at this point. If you have concerns about the motion, I welcome amendments. Councillor Harvey, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first question would be for the mover. I assume it's safe to say that your intent is that this program would be up and running in time for the growing season this year?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Harvey. The hope for sure, and that's why we're asking staff to look into it, see what's possible. It was possible in Brampton, and so I think it's worth taking a look at, and I hope we can answer some of the concerns that council has raised this evening by proceeding with an investigation into such a program.
I guess where I have a concern, I'm very supportive of the concept. But where I see a big concern with this is timing. We're very late in the game here. If we would have been talking about this a month ago, it may be a different story. And I'm not sure how quick Brampton got theirs off the ground, but it sounds like Brampton had done a lot of engagement with their business community prior to it even coming to council for something like that to get off the ground so quick with the business community front end loading it so much. And typically a staff report, you're looking at a bare minimum of 3 months as a general rule. So I'm just not quite sure how we can put so much pressure on staff to create a robust report about a brand new program when no business contacts have been engaged. And that's where it'd be a little bit different if it was being proposed to us that there's a group of businesses that are already lined up and engaged and willing to be a partner. But I'm not hearing any of that. So in its current form, I'm really struggling with being able to support something of this nature and putting so much pressure on staff where they won't have the ability to walk through this. They're literally going to have to start running at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I'm not so sure that that's fair to be putting staff in that position when we're on a shortened work week and we've laid off so many people also.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Harvey. I believe everybody but Deputy Mayor Ward has spoken to this. Deputy Mayor Ward, did you want to weigh in, or are you good with what you've heard? Okay. So the motion is on the floor as printed. I welcome at this point amendments from those who've raised concerns. Councillor Owen, you did speak to it when you introduced it. So are there any questions? And it can't be answers in the form of a question.
As the mover, am I not able to speak to it to answer the concerns that were raised? Or I know that's been done in the past, but.
I did give you the chance to answer the questions that were asked directly of you, but unfortunately we can't continue debate back and forth on the item. You get one shot at it, and you know, if members of council have a question of you, they can ask it, but you did get to speak to it already.
Okay.
Okay. Any amendments from those who've raised concerns? Okay. My suggestion is that we actually vote on the two parts separately, because there were most of the discussion here was around paragraph 2. Ms. Cook, do I need a motion to separate the items since we're at council? Okay. Okay. Can I have a motion then from a member of council to separate the two items? Councillor Congo, would you move that motion?
Yes, I'll move that motion. Thank you, Mary Lynn.
Okay, I need a seconder for that motion. Councillor Ritma. Okay, those in favor of separating the two paragraphs for the purpose of voting on them separately, can you please indicate? I need everybody to vote either yes or no. So if you're in favor of separating, please indicate. Okay, any opposed to separating the motion? Okay, seeing none, that passes. So we'll vote first on paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 is for staff to review the recommendations to reopen the community gardens. On that matter, paragraph 1, I'll call the question. Those in favor of, sorry, Councillor McCann, do you have a procedure question? Go ahead.
Mayor Lehman, are the community gardens not already opened from the provincial government?
Yes, the motion doesn't have to do with opening them. It has to do with having our staff investigate how to do that safely, like provide the safe, well, the motion, I'll read the motion again. Paragraph 1, that staff in the operations department in consultation with the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit review the proposed COVID-19 comprehensive safety recommendations for community gardens released by the Community Growing Network of Sustain Ontario in order to prepare for the safe opening of local community gardens at Eastview Community Park, Sunnydale Park, Sheer Park, and Golden Meadow Park. Does that clarify?
No, it's not clear. I don't understand. If we don't vote yes or no to this, we're going to open them up anyways. Isn't this redundant?
So
you
without
don't need council direction to open up the gardens. They're already going to do that, right?
The motion is with regards to how they're opened up. So there are specific guidelines around that are referenced in the motion. I'm not sure how to clarify your question anymore. The decision as to whether or not community gardens can open was up to the province, but our residents can't go and do that today. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the intent of the motion is to make sure that there's still the distancing requirements observed and the safety requirements observed when that's done. And that's something that we have to do as a municipality before we let people just go out there and use the community gardens. Now, that's my interpretation of the motion. I can go to staff and see if that's clear, but you can also ask Councillor McCann if you need more.
Well, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I just think, it's a little bit redundant. I mean, you have to have social distancing everywhere in Canada right now. So I just don't know why we're going down this rabbit hole and going through this process, and why we said, I almost written up to now, I shouldn't wanted to separate the motions. Anyways, it's a small item. I just think it's a little redundant right now. So
Okay, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Just for Councillor McCann's benefit, I mean, one example would be the health unit may come back and say you can't open the community gardens until there's a wash station there or some way for people to sanitize their equipment. That might be the kind of thing the health unit will recommend. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just means there might be steps we should take before we do it.
Sure.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, yeah.
Just to Deputy Mayor Ward with that comment. Wouldn't staff already do this? Like, we're working in everything with the emergency management team. Everything goes through the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit. So they would do it anyways. It's almost like the whole motion should have been kiboshed, but we're saving it now for some reason. That's how I feel.
There was actually, that was just an example of one. I know that when Councillor Elwin and Kungle sent out their motion earlier, there was a whole attachment to it that listed all the kinds of things that the steps that should be taken, the recommendations that of the steps that should be taken before community gardens are opened. And I assume those are the kind of things we're going to ask the health unit to put in place, or what should be put in before we open them. Yeah, maybe we would be doing them anyways, but.
So Deputy Mayor Ward, when the province come out with the measures we took, we didn't vote on that. The province come out and said, well, social distance, and council didn't vote on that. It was through the emergency declaration of emergency. And like I said, I just think we're not giving staff enough credit. I think they were going to do this anyways when the province moved the motion to open the gardens, and realizing, you know, they were lobbied to do it and they took the word of it. But like I said, I'll use Jeff's term. I think we're boiling the ocean over something that was already done with the announcement on Sunday.
So if I might, members of council, because I see a number of requests to speak again. If your conclusion is it does no harm to review the recommendations, which is what the motion says, then let's just pass the motion. I don't know how many members of council had a chance to read through that attachment. It's fairly detailed. What all council is doing, you're right, by this motion is directing our staff to use those, to review those safety recommendations and to get the community gardens open in response. If the motion does not pass, would they come up with their own in consultation with the health unit? They might well indeed. You know, I'm not sure it's worth us debating whether or not we should be looking at the safety recommendations. I think our staff probably receiving this direction would do probably what they are going to do anyway. But there was an effort, you know, made here to research those guidelines, how to do it safely, and reinforce to the members of the public that if we're going to open the gardens, it needs to be done safely. So unless there's another question of procedure on paragraph 1, we have had a lengthy debate around the motion. I'd like to call the question. Okay, so on paragraph 1, those in favor of the first paragraph of the motion, please indicate. And opposed? Sorry, those opposed, please indicate again. Okay, that carries. On paragraph 2, which is the investigation of the creation of the backyard garden program, everybody, I think except for Barry, had a chance to speak to this. Are there, I'll call again, are there any amendments? Anybody wish to address any of their concerns by way of amendment? Okay, then I'll call the question. Those in favor of paragraph 2, please indicate. Just those in favor, please indicate. And opposed? Okay, that fails. Okay, that completes the direct motions for tonight. We'll move on to the staff presentation. We have one presentation to be received this evening. It's with regards to an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is from CAO Michael Prowse. I will hand things over to our CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Members of council, I wanted to provide you hopefully a briefer update this week on the COVID-19 process throughout the city, sharing with you some of the relevant details, much of which you've already received throughout the week, but to share it again with you and members of council. Can I get the next slide, please, Ryan? So the overview of our current status, members of council, there's 259 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Network area, including 137 recovered, 8 hospitalizations, and 15 deaths. The COVID-19 Assessment Center at 490 Huronia Road, for your information, is open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And currently they're advising that their wait times are approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Local cases in our area are increasing and will continue over the next days and weeks, although at a better rate than originally modeled, likely because of the efforts around the physical distancing that we have talked about week in and week out. This clearly is not a disease just affecting the elderly. Most of our cases are among adults between the ages of 35 and 64 years of age. And we are now seeing a number of cases related to individuals in their 20s. I would note for members of council, RVH is still seeking donations of masks from the public or mask suppliers. And you should be advised that Barrie Fire continues to partner with RVH and recently has lent them their powered air purifying respirators for the use at RVH to keep our healthcare professionals in the best possible condition. Next slide, please, Ryan. Members of council, the financial hardship applications are now available on the city's website for elimination of the fixed charge on the next water and wastewater bill as directed by council. Residents are encouraged to apply as soon as possible as there is limited funding available for this program. Landlords are required to pass their water bill relief onto their tenants if water charges are included in the rent. It should also be noted that the payment due date grace periods have been extended from 35 to 63 days for all residents and from 30 to 63 days for all businesses for the next 2 billing periods, effective April 23rd, 2020. The extended due date will be indicated on all water and wastewater bills. The public should also be advised that Barrie free transit has now been extended up until May 31st for our residents. Next slide, please, Roy. Under enforcement, members of council, for the period of April 20th to April 26th, we had 960 total instances reported or investigated by our municipal law enforcement. 739 were generated through routine patrols. Of that, there was 110 violations, including dog off leash, children playing on playground equipment, use of sports fields, and some non-COVID smoking in the parks, which were dealt with. We also respond to 35 additional emails and 50 general inquiries. The complaints broken down, 67 were related to gatherings, 33 were park equipment use, 28 related to businesses, and 8 related to the physical distancing not being adhered to. And in all, we laid 7 charges, 6 related to the actions in the parks, 4 of those being COVID specific, and 1 business received as a distancing complaint, but in the end, it was actually charged with operating without a business license. In total, since March 16th, the municipal law enforcement team has dealt with just over 3,000 inquiries or complaints. Thank you, Ryan. Under city staffing changes, members of council, due to the extended cancellation of several of the non-essential services and resulting financial impact, the city has temporarily laid off additional positions and redeployed other positions. On April 17th, a further 55 positions were laid off. 25 of them were temporary, 5 of them were permanent part-time, and 25 were permanent full-time positions. In total, members of council, over 500 positions have been affected since the outbreak of the COVID-19 crisis. In addition, for most areas of the corporation, as I think members of council noted earlier, staff are working on a reduced work week, which has been implemented virtually across the organization. And this is in a further attempt to reduce or eliminate the need for additional layoffs. However, further layoffs will continue to be contemplated. And as a reminder for members of council and for the public, it will take some time to ramp our service levels back up once the province starts to clearly announce their openings as they begin. Under good news, members of council, I wanted to let you know that we will be rolling out the Senior Without Walls, which is a program that will utilize senior volunteers at our clubs and develop phone lists to make contact with seniors and work towards our virtual types of programs. They are anticipating to be starting this week, and there are additional details in a memo for you on the circulation list. The Recreation and Cultural Department are also looking at providing some virtual recreation programs. We're hoping to launch those on May 4th, and we'll have some additional details for you in the upcoming weeks. Should also note, as part of a phased, my apologies, as part of a phased return, the popular farmers market is reviewing the potential to reopen in mid-May, providing contactless pickup of pre-ordered groceries and products, and the pickups would be occurring in the city parking lot. Additional details will be provided as the farmers market further develops their operational plans, and we'll share them broadly with you and with the public. Also, under good news, members of council, the textile pickup program will continue. The next scheduled date will be mid to late June, but that program continues in its pilot form. And I also wanted to advise members of council, the Dunlop Streetscape project is moving, easy for me to say, moving to the next phase well in advance of the original timelines. We're now the Owen Street intersection expected to reopen in early June. The Maple to Mary section will begin this week with the Maple intersection closed now and the Mary intersection to be closed in early June. And the work is expected to be completed by mid-July. So under the good news net category, we're able to advance some critical infrastructure work in a vulnerable part of the city. So I think that is certainly good news. Members of council, I also wanted to share with you that further to the memo on today's circulation list, I'm pleased to advise of the release of the Barrie Business Response Action Plan. It outlines actions of Economic and Creative the Economic and Creative Development Department and the Small Business Center with the Mayor's Task Force to respond to the impact of COVID-19. The plan consists of 5 measures with several actions in each area. The first, connecting businesses to financial supports, such as the $241 million available through the Ontario Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. 2, to support immediate revenue generation to increase survival rates for our existing businesses. And 3, business outreach to understand the needs of the local businesses in this ever-changing climate. 4, to keep our community and business community connected. And 5, to move Barrie's economy forward past and post COVID-19. The plan will be made available on the resources for businesses in the COVID section of the city's website and through social media. Members of council, that is a brief recap of some of the things that have changed in the last week or two, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, CIO Prowse. Any questions from members of council for our CIO on the update? Okay, I am not seeing any, Mr. Prowse. Thank you very much for the presentation, for the update. And for those watching at home, of course, the city continues to update our COVID-19 page regularly, both with information for residents and for businesses, as well as pushing information out through the media whenever there are any changes to city service levels or city services. That brings us to inquiries. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any inquiries of staff?
I have none.
Any other inquiries of staff members of council? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. This is more not a statement than an inquiry. I think it's great that we're meeting like this and getting back to city business. And I just thought that we should say thanks to Ryan and his team because they've made this possible. And he stays behind the, we don't see him. So I thought it's great that we're able to get back to business and kudos to him. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I certainly echo that. We have been able through this platform to resume our business, and that is because we have a great staff of IT support here at the city and a clerk as well, who's been willing to adapt to trying to create how to run a virtual meeting. And she's sitting far enough away from me that she can look away and be embarrassed while I talk about her. Okay, Councillor Morales, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I was going to ask an informative question to staff for those that haven't heard yet, but it might be an announcement on your list. I'll let you do if it's on your list. Were you going to touch base on Dunlop Street reconstruction, or is that on your list?
I did not have that, so if you'd like staff to provide an update, I'm sure Ms. Miller could do that.
Sure, Ms. Miller, could you provide members of the public that are streaming us right now on the status, the public information on the status of the Dunlop Street reconstruction?
Ms. Miller.
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor Lehman. We are able to advance the Dunlop Street construction project. Stage 1 that was originally scheduled to be complete in July is almost complete now. The street lights between Points and Owen Street have been, the final street lights have been put in. The sanitary sewer installation and water main installation on Owen Street have taken place, and we're hopeful that that Owen Street intersection will be open in June. We're then going to move on to what was originally stage 3 from from Maple to Mary Street. That intersection at Maple closed today, and we will be undertaking the reconstruction work through to the middle of July. And then at that time in June, when Owen Street intersection opens, we will close the Mary Street intersection and complete that work. And then we'll move on to what was our originally scheduled stage 2. In the 5 Points intersection, all will be closed and we will complete that work. So we're advancing very well and hope to have the project completed several months earlier than was originally planned. And I'd like to thank our partners in construction, Arnott Construction, for their willingness to advance this project and keep both their staff, the residents that might be in the downtown, and our city staff safe during this unprecedented times.
Thank you, Ms. Miller, and thank you to everybody involved, from the front lines to the coordinating staffers, especially the small businesses that are, just wanting this done as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Councillor Morales. Councillor Jim Harris, did I see you indicate? No? Okay. Any others who have inquiries of staff? Seeing none, announcements. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'm not sure you were going to mention the wastewater plant report that's in our circulation list, but it's extremely good news for the city, and it's a tribute to our staff for the great job they're doing on that. There's lots of things that have happened, but a couple of the ones that were the ones that jump out are the fact that our phosphorus concentration levels are 0.03 milliliters per liter. Is it? Anyways, it's less than a third of what our target is under the Lake Simcoe phosphorus reduction strategy. So in other words, we're doing more than three times as well as we need to do under the Lake phosphorus reduction strategy. So I think it's, just didn't want to let it pass without pointing out that the city is doing a great job with their wastewater plant.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for that, Deputy Mayor Ward. And for many years now, this has been a huge concern, the central concern of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. And, the reduction is due to the optimization work that our staff have done at that plant with the existing technology, which is actually just amazing. So thank you very much for pointing it out. Councillor Natalie Harris, announcements.
Thank you, Mary Lehman. I just wanted to remind people that it's the time of year where they're pulling out their motorized bikes, and it's tempting to go on our trails, such as the Art of Bluffs. But a lot of the trails, as far as I know, I'm not sure if any of them are not permitted to have those bikes. It's obviously not very safe for the families and children that are walking along the trails as well. So there are signs posted at the entrances of the trails. Just a reminder, unfortunately, you have to go to a trail that's permitted in.
Thanks for that, Councillor Harris. Any other announcements, members of council? Okay, seeing none, I do have several. First of all, I wanted to note we have proclaimed May 3rd to May 10th as World Maternal Mental Health Week in the city of Barrie. There are a couple of incredible local women who have organized events for the past 3 years. Obviously, with COVID-19, they're not going to be able to do the same gatherings that they have. But I provided them a video today, and they're collecting videos from MPP Jill Dunlop, a number of others around the county to draw increasing awareness to this issue, a very important issue made that much more challenging by the isolation surrounding the pandemic. I've been asked to note that RVH continue to have a shortage of some types of PPE, including unopened boxes of masks and gloves. If there are those out there who have them, they can donate until supplies are received by the province. Inquiries can be made through the RVH's foundation. The CAO mentioned a senior center without walls. I will note that it's being facilitated over the phone, as mentioned, with the help of some community partners, Red Cross, Chartwell Barrington, 55 plus center volunteers, and Rec and Culture, which is being launched this week. And again, the contact details for a senior center without walls, 739-4223, or you can send an email to recreation.information@barrie.ca. Spring street sweeping started on April 6th. Will take about 10 weeks to complete, weather permitting. This, of course, improves our water quality as well as the aesthetics and safety of city streets and parking lots. The source water protection zone, we often get this question. Source water protection zones are swept first, which is why some of the core areas of the city and the south end have been done first, followed by moving out into the residential neighborhoods further from the lake. The city asks that sand piles not be pushed onto the road. The sweeper can't pick them up. If possible, if you're aware the street sweeper's on your street, if you get your car off, that will allow the street sweeper to do a complete job. Thank you very much for your help. Residents who are interested in buying a rain barrel, we can't do the truck sale we normally do in the Canadian Tire parking lots, so we are going to sell them online. They are for sale online. There is a delivery service. We'll bring them to your house. And they will be left for you on your driveway so that the delivery people are distancing. So you can order those online at enviroworld.ca/Barrie. A reminder, of course, that the emergency measures bylaw does remain in effect. The CAO Pro spoke to that. We do need to keep up the distancing, notwithstanding the discussion of opening and all of us eagerly anticipating the end to these restrictions. They are not going to arrive tomorrow. We heard from the Premier today. It is going to be a matter of weeks at the very least still, and we are still very much at the height of the pandemic. So please respect the 2-meter physical distancing and the no gatherings of 5 or more. There is the enforcement services line 739-4241 or enforcement.services@barrie.ca. If you are thinking of organizing a drive, and we had some incredible events in the community even over the weekend to organize supplies to address that food security issue, to address the need for PPE. We had some of the car dealers in Barrie that organized collecting some resources that are needed. We just encourage you to contact the enforcement services folks ahead of time so that you don't get any complaints. There are ways to do these things safely, but we do encourage anybody who's organizing a drive, whether it's food related or garden or PPE or whatever, please do contact the city to get guidance around those provincial orders. Last, I just wanted to note Project Gratitude. This is an incredible effort being made by Marshall Green and the Barrie Community Foundation. They have a number of donors who are longtime residents of businesses in the city of Barrie. What they did was turn their mind to how they could feed frontline staff in healthcare, RVH, and then long-term care communities. The original hope was to feed one full shift of 300 at RVH, of the 300 frontline workers there. They have now paid for over 1,800 prepared meals. And I was privileged to represent council at the first delivery at Grove Park Home on Friday. So thanks to everyone who's involved and donated to Project Gratitude. And the other really cool thing about what they're doing, recognizing that there are needs in times of crisis and strong communities are resilient and ready for crisis, they have started to set up a future crisis fund. Those who are familiar with the BCF know they build endowment funds, which exist for all time and can be used to produce funds when they're required. And Marshall and the team at the Barrie Community Foundation are building that crisis fund. So for anyone out there who wishes to support these initiatives, look up the Barrie Community Foundation, and of course we thank them for their work. And I should, in the same breath, thank all of those who continue to run charitable initiatives around the city. Barrie Families Unite was mentioned tonight, who have continued to do that great work. Now over 10,000 people in the city of Barrie, across all parts of the city that are part of that group. Barrie Live Music, who have raised something like $7,000 or $8,000 with live music presentations and donations online. And of course, the amazing work of all our charities who are helping vulnerable residents of our city. So thank you all. The last item of business on the agenda are the bylaws. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed, bills 37 and 38.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed, bill 37 and 38. Comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the bylaws? Are any opposed? None. That carries. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed, bill 39.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed, bill 39, the confirmation bylaw. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor? Any opposed? None. That carries. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councillor Harris, seconded Natalie Harris, seconded by Councillor Raitma. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, members of council. We will be proceeding next Monday with Planning Committee, and we will see all our viewers then. Thank you.
So long, everybody.